number of speakers for today for you, and I'm just going to do a little introduction now to sort of set the scene. Invariably, there will be some form of feedback afterwards, just to get your views on.
So I'm going to start with Daniel Kahneman. Who in the room has read Daniel Kahneman's book? Okay, a few worthy souls. I've got it here in front of me. It is a heavyweight tome. I would recommend, if you haven't read it, get hold of it, and by all accounts start at the end, the two selves bit. My wife's bizarre. She reads the last page of every book that she reads. I've never understood it. She just kind of wants to get straight to the climax, I guess. And then she goes back to the beginning. Buy this book, start at the end, and then see how it captures your attention. Now, I think everybody will be aware of the concept of System 1 and System 2 thinking. We are fundamentally lazy beasts. System 1 is what we do unconsciously. It's the habits that we get into. It's the thing when we're going through the supermarket, we reach out and we grab the products we want to get without looking. And then when we reach for one and it's not there, we have to stop. We go further up and think, why are they doing that? Why have they moved it? It's always there. And we feel somewhat aggrieved. That's our habitual purchasing behavior. The other part is when we have to think about things, change our routines, change our patterns, and actually start to consciously think about why we need to buy something and then to make a decision. That's hard, and most of us consciously try to avoid doing that most of the time. That takes much more of our energy than the habitual stuff that we do. Which all leads very much to the power of brands. I was talking about this before in the in the breakout area before we came in here, and the power of brands and the associations that we have with brands, which allows us to make decisions without really having to think about it too much. All those are positive associations, whether it's the organization, whether it's the product. I've got an Apple sign up there. Some research I did recently, 35-year-old fellow. I buy Apple products because I'm a cool cat who's up with the times. Lots of associations going on there. It's not about the functionality of the Apple per se. I guess a high percentage of people in this room will have an Apple phone in the pocket. It's a thing of beauty. So there is a visual, aesthetic thing going on that we're buying into there, and we're prepared to pay a bit more for it. The quote below, I feel smug when people ask me about my Primark dress. This was a really interesting bit of work I did recently, where a young 28-year-old woman was saying, I feel really smug about this. I'm trying to convince my mother that she can stop shopping at Hobbs and shop in Primark because she'll get just as much pleasure out of it. It's a hard task, but her mother will eventually come around. And that tutoring up the way, if you like, to the older generation is happening more and more as we look to learn from our offspring in particular, who teach us lessons in life that we kind of tune into. I feel smug. She then went on to say, buying dresses from Primark means I can buy a handbag from Mulberry. And my boyfriend doesn't my boyfriend has no idea how much it costs. Now, I thought a bag from Mulberry would cost about £200. I am somewhat deluded, it seems. I'm told it's about £1,000. So the fact that, by the way, this young lady, who's a fascinating character, is a 28-year-old lawyer. So buying clothes from Primark to go to functions and buying the Mulberry bag. I wonder how many Mulberry bags there are in the room right now where boyfriends or husbands don't know how much they cost. That's a fascinating insight into what's going on in somebody's head in the decision-making process. It's about how it made her feel. That's how it made her feel. So the dress, it makes her feel a little bit smug, so there's a thing of pride going on in here. But there's also a thing of being canny with money. I mean, since 2008, we're all very conscious of how we spend cash. You know, whether you have or have not got money, we're all being canny with how we utilize our money. We're kind of buying into the coolness of being savvy with cash, irrespective of how affluent we happen to be. So there are two things going on to the left or right of the chart, whichever way you want to interpret it, whether you're looking at it or standing here. But on the far side, what else is going on? That aspect of the Mulberry is, I am significant, I am relevant, is a conscious facet of the decision-making process. And I am progressing. I am moving on in life, which is fundamentally what we are looking to be doing with our lives. Our life story at the end of the journey, we want to be a good life story. We want to progress through life. So all of that is going up in that simple I buy Primark dresses quote that young lady came out with.
There's some great academic thinkers around customer experience in this room, and Lexden bring a heck of a lot of that to the party. And I have spent To finance directors that have had the misfortune of having me in their companies over the years, whether that's Aviva, Eon, AXA, have seen me spend millions on very high level, with the top 4 management consultancies, the Deloittes and McKinseys, or bespoke like Lexden or Beyond Philosophy, but I've spent millions on customer experience design, development and delivery. And much of it has been, and that's really, our purpose is to enable more people to enjoy straightforward investing. And each of those words becomes really key in terms of how we make decisions. The brand is this simply easier. Hopefully you can see straightforward, simply easier. If any have any reason to, after this morning, to have a look at share.com, the website, the feedback we continually get in comparison to our competitors' websites is it's just really basic and really straightforward. It's not particularly funky, and I'll show you a couple of screenshots. And our investors really appreciate that, because I think in the desire to come across as corporate and sophisticated in financial services, sometimes we leave the man in the street behind in terms of an understanding of how to access and use it. Of those 15,000, 13,200 of those investors since the beginning of the year, even with what's happened with the FTSE and the markets around the world, are in profit on their practice accounts. So what they're doing is building confidence, building a little bit of sense that they can experiment and build their knowledge and understanding of how to invest. We genuinely want our investors to be successful, and partly for them as individuals, but actually what you hear from our people is they have this real sense of pride around the fact that as people move into investing in companies in Britain and around the world, they feel a bit more connected to the kind of the fabric of society. So we run focus groups, we do quantitative research, but if I'm absolutely honest, the majority of the research we do is when we need to understand something better, we just go and ask, and we ask. The majority of it is positive. But within that positive, there's a relationship that says, from our investors in the main are saying, we really like dealing with you, we appreciate what you do for us, how about if you just did this? But in a really nice, constructive way. Whereas when I was at an energy company, you wouldn't get that same sentiment coming across.
To talk to you about an area which we see very often being neglected in customer experience, and that's the area of brand. And there's lots of reasons for that. We've all worked with models which are fix and build, and as a consequence of fixing, it tends to be led by operations people. It may be you've seen lean processing, Kaizen, all those sorts of models come in, and typically if you try and get a brand person around that table, one, they don't want to be there, and secondly, they're not necessarily welcome there. Sadly, that's the shortfall of effective customer experience, and this piece is about reminding us of how important brand is in that, but also begging brand people to stand up for themselves and to get back to that table. So where it matters most to customers, do what we do best. Now, there's two ways of approaching that. You can either say, let's find out what matters most to customers and let's go around to those particular touch points or requirements and make what we do better than anyone else. Or, as the biggest brands will actually do, is to perhaps start with what we are great about and make customers value that. Make sure those moments are actually baked into how we deliver it. So when our competitor comes along and says, we can do that, some smart person in that business says, yes, but we're never going to be able to deliver it in the way that they deliver it. And that's the thing about branded customer experiences. It can live in any particular touch point of the organisation. It should eke through the brand as well as the improvement it makes to customers. But this is the model we typically use, and it's a fairly straightforward one. It's not ownable by us, but we find it very easy and helpful for people to understand what they should be doing. And principally, I heard Lucian Camp say this: if you're building a chart, you should always make sure that things end up in the top right-hand corner. And also, I'm an ex-planner. Planners love triangles in things. So this one does both. It's got a triangle, and I end up in the top right-hand corner, so it's good news. But with customer experience, if you look and see how you're developing it for your organisation, there are principally 3 levels, and you hear this a lot of the times. There's so many broken things going on in our business. They even talk to me about the other stuff. I've got to get that stuff fixed first of all. Those brilliant basics. When you feel like you've got through there, and of course you never will, so that should never be just the strategy you follow, it's about making it better than it was for customers before. And I think that's a problem we're very troubled with at the moment, is that digitalisation is a sense things are improving or being to be different, but it's about making it memorable, finding those defining expressions that really connect with what Tom was saying, so you can actually be remembered for your customers. So when they come to that decision making, they're actually thinking about your brand without considering the others. Now there's 2 ways of doing that. You can just go up. And if you go up on the left, and we see an awful lot of organisations going up on the left here, you will do good things. You will fix the stuff that's broken. You will improve it, and then you will start to wow your customers. Phil will come on to this later. This is about preservers, transformers, and vanguards. And actually what you find is if you stick in the bottom left-hand corner, you won't get the return on investment on what you're doing. And if you don't get the return on investment, you won't get the confidence of the board, and you won't have a sustainable strategy. So you need to be thinking more on the right-hand side. So when you're doing the things that actually are just efficiency models, you're able to demonstrate the way we've done it means our competitors can't copy us. So brand differentiation and brand experience, we term as brand experience platform. And it's something that's a very useful tool to actually try and connect up the different parts of the business and bring brand more into the fray. And I would say, and I'm not saying this glibly or to be dismissive of brand works, I think it's fabulous, but principally these 2 things are enduring: your purpose and role in society, and your brand positioning and values, which expresses how we do this better than anyone else. And typically what happens is the stuff gets thrown out and it comes down here, and we have great marketing and great advertising going out. And everyone gets the slice of what the brand is, and they run off and actually do it. Well, that's very difficult for any one of us sitting within an organisation to work with. And what we actually need is much more guidance. We need to know, if you are going to be expecting a brand to be delivered, how exactly do I do that? And we found a couple of extra little layers just become very, very useful to include. And the first is a brand experience idea. So this is making it much more accessible to people who are using it. It's aligned to the positioning, and it makes the positioning meaningful to all. So me in compliance, me sitting in product, me sitting in risk, me sitting in distribution, I get what that brand means to me and what I do and how I can add value to my customers. It's about bringing branded customer principles through. And the reason I went to Surround Brand yesterday is because a lot of financial services organisations, especially high net worth and private banks, look to hotels as sort of the place to go, what we should be doing there. The thing that they have that we seem to have dropped or potentially forgotten the importance of is they have quality standards running through things. So when you go to the Dorchester Hotel, the aesthetics and the experience are the same branded principles, the same quality standards. There's no difference between the 2. And in financial services, what we seem to have done is we've got an aesthetics in which we put the brand standards against, but we haven't applied the same logic to the experiences. And as a consequence, there's a disconnect. Now, as a consumer, I see that and I struggle with that, because I do experience the difference between what I read and what I go, which consistently explain what we do for our customers and how it makes them feel. It's all about output stuff as opposed to anything else. Then gives this unifying approach across the organisation to understand what we should do better. And what that then does is it comes through not just through the comms and the advertising, but fundamentally it goes through absolutely every part of the organisation. So the quality standards are then applied to absolutely every facet, because it is multifaceted, as said earlier. Experience, you don't know when it's going to happen, you can't control it, and as a consequence of which, you've got to be on your A game if you're thinking you're going to lead with experience at all times.
You're now going to learn if you don't know about it, about EXQ. So without further ado, I hand you over to Professor Dr. Phil Klaus.
It's great to be here, and thank you so very much for coming. When you look at it, achieving measurement-driven customer experience profitability with EXQ. Why should it be measurement-driven? Remember Peter F. Drucker? You know the gentleman? He's considered the management guru of the management gurus. In 1997, if I'm not mistaken, they asked the management gurus, who will be your guru? And the number one was Peter F. Drucker. And one of his most famous quotes is, only what gets measured gets managed. And I couldn't agree with him more. Before I became an academic, I had a real job. So just like you, I was a senior marketing manager in financial services, private banking, wealth management, retail, and I saw in many conferences and masterclasses just like you. And I was listening to a lot of people who told me, this measurement will be the silver bullet. It will solve everything. It will take away the pain. It will explain. It will drive profitability. I heard it all. But just as you, I applied it and it worked. 3 months, 6 months, 9 months, 12 months, a year or two later, my CEO says, what about this initiative with this measurement? And what did I reply? Yeah, it still works. It increases our brand perception. Walked away. And brand value. I said, wait a moment, Phil, please come back. How can we measure brand value, brand perception? Can you show me on the balance sheet where this is? And I said, regrettably not. But there are great companies out there who believe it is there. Sometimes you get away with it, sometimes you don't. Most times I get away with it, even if I couldn't produce a single ROI. But gladfully, these times are over. What drives their behavior, however, this is something you can look at. You need to learn how to understand them. What drives their behavior, not what drives their NPS score from 8 to 9. This is not how it works. Not what makes them today happy on a 5, tomorrow on a 4. No, you need to know what drives their behavior. Put their money where their mouth is. How do we do that? Focus on customer experiences. Looking at this, one thing that you expect from a presentation like this is, of course, we're talking big data. Big data is on everybody's mind. If we ask the CMOs, where shall we invest? Social media and big data. That's what the CMO says. Now I ask the CEO, and he says social media, tools, toys, technologies. What does it do for the bottom line? Don't see anything. Big data, yeah, we have more data. We have data we can feed until the cows come home. Do we do something with it? Does it have an impact? No. Why? I'll never forget, there is no big data. Data is not big, data is not small, it's data. Today we have the technology to get the answer for big questions. However, all you guys are, you're collecting data, but you cannot convert it in insights because you are not trained to ask the right questions. So you have a lot of trends, tendency, and all this what do they call it? Futurologists who will tell us, oh, this is where it's going to go. I'm like, yeah, let's just rub the glass ball and see where it's going to happen. No, we have the data to prove it. So what data would that be that you know what people are going to do? Let's take just a look at this nice graph for a moment. Digest it. Because I believe some of you in the room here might measuring the first two things. Let's look at the column that says word of mouth behavior. It's not intention, it's behavior. So we have here at first point a measurement that should give you a clear indicator if people would recommend or not. However, good old customer satisfaction is better at it, better at what the other one is designed for. What does it say about that measurement? NPS has a function. Don't get me wrong. It creates awareness inside the organization that the customer is important. It's almost if you come to a doctor and say, I have a problem, I will say, good, acknowledgement, you're there. And then I take NPS for it. Probably not the right way, but it's a good start. Then, but the most interesting part is share of wallet. How much money do you spend with us versus my competitors? And I believe a score of 1 in academia, we consider that statistically irrelevant. If you miss 99% of the explanations why people do or do not give you your money, I think you're doing something wrong. And not only that, let's say you got this measurement, you invested a lot of money in it, so you have to go for it. So you measure it until there's no tomorrow, and you celebrate, hey, we went from here to there, yeah. And your CEO says, oh, how did it change the profitability? I don't have a clue. But it sounds good, you know. It sounds logical. If you like us, you give us a 9 on a 10. Of course, you give us more money. Please don't let him ask a question. It doesn't work that way. It just doesn't work. And if you focus on this measurement to find out what your business is going to do, then you're going to call Christopher, and like often the clients call myself and say, we don't get it. We don't know what's going on. Sales goes up, revenues goes up, customer satisfaction is high, NPS goes up, and still profitability goes down, share of category goes down, and the churn, people go everywhere. How is that possible? I'm like, yes, it's very easy. We do a piece of research for the last 12 years on it. You're looking at the wrong things. You're focusing on something that is not reflecting what you want to do. If you focus on 1% of what explains your actions, young lady, and I just do this 1%, and I do everything right, and you do something else, how high are the chances that you actually do something else? 99? But I cannot explain it. I know what you're doing, how you're doing it, when you're doing it, but I have no idea why you're doing it. So why do we focus on that stuff? Because it's easy. Let's look at what EXQ does. EXQ delivers a different kind of insight. And this is why I became an academic. And this is why I preach it out there. Because I want everybody to take it, because customer experience is a little bit more. Don't think about your job. Do you rather have a good experience or a bad experience as a customer? I believe we can all agree a good experience. So if you deliver good experience by knowing what they're doing, you think you're going to have happier employees, happier customers, therefore happier shareholders and happier CEOs? Yes! Who has on their business model written, we want to deliver bad experiences? And what are you focusing on? You want to delight your customers. Let me get a reality check here. You don't want to delight, just start with not upsetting me, and you would do a good job. So in order to summarize it, how in God's name you can become a vanguard? Focus solely on your customers. It's a journey. Rome wasn't built in a day. And believe me, I live in Italy, so I can comment on this. But you already did the right thing. You are here today, and you're paying attention to what we are presenting. Therefore, I thank you, and I wish you all a nice afternoon.
Set
to what's going on. And I hand you over to Alvin, who's going to wonderfully facilitate this session.
Okay, good afternoon everyone. I'm Alvin Jackson. I'm glad to be part of the Lexden family. Okay, let's make a start. Well, Phil reminded us what Peter Drucker said, that what gets measured gets managed. So I was going to just ask the panelists, from this sort of best practice, some of the great companies they've seen over the last few months when we've been judging some of these awards. The companies you've seen, do they focus first on the measure, whether it's NPS, CSAT or Phil's EXQ, or are they focusing on the sort of customer experience model and not worrying about the measures because they know they're going to take care of themselves? I don't know, want to have a go at sort of that question.
I'll have a go. The companies that I work with tend to have their traditional measures in place. And just as, you know, the vanguards are always looking for new measures, I think most of the companies, the likes of which I've worked with, which are all big premium brands, they usually have the old measures and they're starting to understand that they're not quite good enough. But in terms of coming up with a new set of measures, they haven't necessarily got very far with that yet. But they have, at least the better ones, got the realization of some of the things that are not great about some of the old measures. And that's probably as the academic work, you know, Philip and other people have done, is starting to filter out into community and into the C-suite, I think, as well.
I think it's true that, I mean, a lot of large organisations, they've been measuring things like NPS for quite a long time because they like comparing themselves to others, despite what Phil advises them. Do you think any of the sort of clients you've worked with are willing to sort of start to drop those and put them below the radar, below the management dashboard?
Well, and one of the companies that I had the privilege of listening to a presentation on at the Customer Experience Award was the Nationwide, and I felt very much that their new way of dealing with their customers was really about the fact they had truly listened to the fact that if a customer couldn't get their an appointment with a mortgage broker, they would go somewhere else. And so what they did is they came up with this particular concept whereby you go into a branch and you can have a virtual interview with a mortgage consultant. And I just felt very much that was much more about listening to the customer, coming up with a solution for a customer, as opposed to worrying too much about measurement.
You'll have seen in your sort of experience as judges, we'll have all seen sort of all those different sort of approaches to financial services. What do you think is the best approach for a financial services company? Should they be a commodity? Should they be, we'll help you retrieve your dreams?
You know, it's this unidirectional view, how you view yourself. Your customers couldn't care less how you view yourself. If you deliver what they are looking for, they will take care of you. So don't say, oh, I have to be different. Again, this is the view of my competitors' differentiation. Differentiation is only in the mind of the consumer. If they think you're different in a good way, that I choose you over others, way to go. But that's not coming from you making a strategic decision. This is how we're going to be different. No, listen to them first, what they will value. And if you deliver it, they show you.
We've got to sort of probably a little bit more time to just to open up the questions to the floor. If anybody's got any burning questions inspired by what we've heard today. The young lady, I don't know if we've got a mic or whether you have to shout or which is it?
I'll try and shout.
Let's just say that you are where you're from.
Yeah, Katie Minson. I've just started at Dixon's Carphone. We measure NPS for people who have purchased from us through a text message which they receive on their phone, and we get really high results from that. But the whole system's fundamentally flawed because we're only capturing data from people who have purchased from us. So I was wondering if the panel have got any way of capturing feedback from people who walk out the store because it was too busy and they weren't served, or people who don't purchase, and why they deflect and go to other brands instead.
So I think this is where certainly one answer to this is that the traditional research has to come in and get behind some of those all-important psychological factors that we discussed. Because it's not just the sort of the actual transactional, functional element of why didn't they purchase. It's far more likely that the behavioural and psychological factors of the different key segments are going to come into play, about which channel do they want to engage with you in anyway, who else will they talk to, and some of those other wider factors. So I know we've got some people from the different research companies in here, like TNS and various people. I think it's about traditional research and and various focus groups, as well as co-creation, which is the customer experience way to do that is to go and co-create and really listen to your customers from their own needs point of view with a blank canvas, I think.
the other speakers have shared with you is all about theories and concepts and what you can achieve if you take the right approach. But when you talk about experience, what I want to share with you today is the practicalities of delivering the experience. Who's the person who does it? Who's the person who leaves that experience with that person to go away and think, I enjoyed that interaction with them, I'm going to come back and do more business with you. Now, all of us in this room are customers of some sort with somebody else, whether it's an individual or whether it's an organisation. So the next few slides that I'm going to take you through today, I want you to think about them from 3 different perspectives. One is your own personal experience. Secondly is the team that you work with in your own organisation. And the thirdly is about the customers, your customer's perspective, or your client's perspective. And one of the things I want to speak to you about today, it's not really been mentioned much this morning, which I'm quite pleased about, because it gives me the opportunity to mention it, is culture. Critical to the success of any team is the environment in which it operates. And the people who create that environment is you. So what sort of environment do you create for the people that you work with when they walk into the office each morning? They look miserable, but they're happy to be there, could not wait to get to work. What do you do to instill that thought process in their minds? Do you ever? It's your relationship with your staff. If you think it very simplistically, you've got the people at the top, the people in the middle, you've got the people at the bottom. And the people at the top don't have a clue of how the people at the bottom think. And the people at the bottom don't have a clue about how the people at the top think. But you guys in the middle are supposed to understand both. Because you're supposed to be intelligent enough to understand the business aspect. Do you collaborate with your people? Do you look at your people as customers or subordinates? It's having a different mindset so that you create that environment in which people can flourish.